Okay, so now I'm going to talk about grad school and beyond and my journey with, as far as that stage of my path. And this is where the sexuality kind of comes in a little bit more. As you grow older, you get sexually active. And um, so basically, I think the next step would be I'd graduated from college and was still, in virgin territory. So, I'm not your typical person who loses her virginity in high school or teenage years. Because, we're taught as Christians to not do that until we get married. And I was actually engaged. I was in a relationship that started right after I graduated high school for 6.5 years until I was 24. And it was just, part of the Christian culture to not engage in intercourse unless you were married. So we abided by that. And a lot of people are shocked to hear that because, I was, I guess, 18 to 24 years old, and 6.5 year relationship is a pretty long time. 3.5 of that was long distance because he was from Texas. But, we wrote each other every day, and it was one of the best relationships I've ever had. Um, And I didn't really find it that difficult, honestly, to wait, in the sense that we were doing, other things instead of intercourse. There's wait, foreplay and whatnot. He loved to pleasure me, and um, so anyway, it wasn't until I graduated college, and actually that's the time that we broke up, is right around my graduation. Um, and so if we flip forward to when I was 27, so I was working in Santa Barbara, having graduated with my degree in sociology, and still a virgin. And, I had come close a few times with him in that, major first relationship, but really hadn't experienced intercourse yet. And it was a decision that I made, being 27 and graduated from college, that I finally said, it seems like I should start getting experience in this area so that at least I have some experience and I know what I'm doing. And so anyway, I started dating someone who was an engineer and quite a bit older than me. I want to say he was like 12 years or 10 years older. And I consciously made the decision to move forward in that area of my life. And, this was, of course, after I kind of realized that that Christian bubble had broke already in my life, and I realized that there was more to the story. And when it came to sexuality and gender roles, things were kind of twisted, so that I was really challenging, let's say, challenging their position around, well, what if you never get married, or what if you don't get married until you're in your 40s, or whatever. And it's kind of a natural experience that is part of life, and I don't think it's really healthy to hold out. It's a personal choice, but for me, I was noticing myself actually it causing some issues, trying to like shut down my body in a sense, instead of letting it flow. And it's, when you engage with someone sexually, it definitely is a decision that needs to be a wise one, because things can go wrong, and, emotions and drama or whatever. But anyway, I consciously made that decision at age 27, late bloomer. And I really wrestled with it too, because I went to grad school after that in Tennessee, where I got my master's in education. And that seemed to be a time period when I was really wrestling too, and with the whole sexuality piece, like really questioning, like, how can that be healthy? Because I was noticing myself shut down. And then it's like it builds up to the point where then you have an experience, and then, in the Christian world, then you feel guilty about it. And shamed or whatever. And it's like, wait a minute, this isn't good. It's like extremes, like we're, in this culture of Christianity where you're like holding off and shutting down emotionally and physically so that you're not tempted to have sex. But then, eventually it kind of comes out in weird ways where you don't want to wait anymore and you want to express love with someone and touch and affection and all that. So I understood both sides of the story well. And I made the decision to, just be wise about my choices with it and, learned that, it's not like the sky falls or the world comes to an end if I have sex, with someone. Because they make you feel like it's the end of the world if that's what you do, outside of being married. And I just kind of realized, that's just not realistic, because if you marry later in life, it's not like you're going to hold off for all those years. That's just not realistic. It's not how we're rigged, and it's not healthy, because sexuality is a part of our awakening process. So I was, really wrestling with those issues, and just had to kind of come to the conclusion that the Christian story on all that was off. And, and having grown up in a traditional Christian home, it's not something we discussed. And, I had to learn everything on my own through experience, unfortunately, because I wasn't coached or taught by my parents. It's not talked about enough and in that culture, and it's like you're just supposed to not do it, and that's like all they have to say about it. So it was hard to have to learn through experience and really wise up and realize the intentions of men often, especially in younger years, is kind of just testosterone driven. And, there was definitely some scarring there, which I think most women will relate to, that, feeling used or not feeling taken care of. And so I learned to just get a lot more discerning and careful about who I share myself with, because I just tended to think everyone was just as pure-hearted as I was about it, and, was disappointed often, I guess, in men's behavior. So I would say my spirituality at that time was, of course, always very involved in my church and singles groups, and prayer has always been a big part of my practice spiritually, aside from reading, the Bible several times in my life, as well as a lot of Christian books and spiritual devotional type books. And I have this habit of where I pray, especially like as I'm waking up in the morning, and it's just kind of a habit where I enjoy praying about different things I want to manifest, and things I'm concerned about, and it's just my way of communicating. And then what seems to be a little bit more advanced in that respect is actually listening and hearing messages around being guided in certain ways. So it's one thing to pray and, communicate with the spirit world, but it's a whole nother skill set to actually hear and listen and be guided. And it's hard to actually put it into words or describe it. I'm going to do the best I can, because I find that I get communicated with in many different ways, and sometimes it's very natural, like through my own heart, just checking in with my heart or my intuition. Sometimes it's impressions, sometimes it's just a message coming to me through multiple avenues at the same time, or it's just kind of confirming something over and over again through different people or situations. And so they have many ways that they communicate, which is quite fascinating. And it's just tuning in, and it's something that it's like almost like a radar that you tune into, that's a little more subtle than, say, having a voice just speak out to you and say, okay, do this now. So, you know, it's kind of a humbling process to just be willing to listen, and that's where meditation comes in. You know, that's the most traditional way, I guess, to listen and see if you're getting impressions. Or because I know I guess being Pisces, I also just tend to channel a lot, you know, which is where I'm listening. I'm getting a lot of impressions and visions and ideas. It can come through something as simple as just getting ideas that are great and that are spiritually minded for the service of the planet. It doesn't have to be it's not necessarily anything super profound. It's just, you know, I guess that stream of consciousness coming through you where you're just aware of things that a lot of people kind of miss or are not tuned into because they haven't developed that aspect of their spirituality yet. So this was kind of the middle part, you know, grad school of me in my journey. And the next clip, I'm going to share with you how I actually got into Tantra.